Hello everyone. Today we are going to be doing the horns tier list, more specifically the handlebars tier list. So that is the disclaimer. This is not a tier list based on the design of the horns. This is purely based on the handlebar potential of the horns. So we are going to be looking strictly at how powerful the horns would be as handlebars and nothing more. If I like the design, I'll talk about it, but other than that, we won't really be factoring it into the ranking. Alright, so let's just begin. First we have Moka, because tier maker didn't make it alphabetical. That's okay. Nice change. Alright, so unfortunately, we are not starting off with a banger. Those horns are tiny, and now Moka herself is not a large character, we all know that. But that doesn't discount the fact that her horns are minuscule. So unfortunately, we can't give her a high ranking because her horns aren't high. I will say though, I think the light green with the black does make for a really nice design. So points for that, but no points for anywhere else. So unfortunately, I hate to do this at the very beginning, but we will give Moka D tier. Now I will also say it's 12 in the morning, that's why I'm speaking so quietly. And the fact that I'm speaking like this while doing a handlebars tier list is food for thought. Alright, moving on to Makoto. So Makoto, her horns are really tall, like the top two horns are massive, and the bottom two horns, they're a nice touch, I guess. You can't really do anything with them, but they are there. Now they're at the front, so you have to reach forward. That's a little weird, but they are kind of level with her head, so it's not as bad. But either way, I do have to say though, second disclaimer, if I don't like a character, I'm going to let that bias show. And now, unfortunately, putting Makoto in the tier right next to Moka would be insulting to Moka, so I actually have to create another tier just for Makoto. What are we calling this? F. F for fuck you. So we're gonna give her, screw it, the dark gray. Can't even see the letter because fuck Makoto. Alright, next up, Satsuki. Now, Satsuki's horns are on the sides of her heads and pointing up, so you don't have to reach as far compared to Makoto, but you do have to reach kind of high. Now Satsuki is a really tall character, so you're gonna have to reach pretty far up there. I do like the design of her horns quite a bit though. I think the red crystal thing does make for a really nice touch, and I mean her horns themselves are massive, so they are pretty nice. I should say though, I'm mostly basing the handlebar judgment based on if they're standing up. I'm not really thinking about any other position, because then you can just argue any position and try to justify SS. I think standing up is the perfect baseline. Anyway, that said, Satsuki is really tall and her horns are really high, but they are large, so I think she's deserving of an A tier. Next up, Ibuki. So unfortunately, like with Momoka's case, I can't justify giving Ibuki a high tier because her horns are just really small. Now, Ibuki's even smaller than Makoto, so in comparison, they are a little larger. That doesn't take away from the fact that her horns are very small. Unfortunately, that means I cannot give Ibuki a high ranking. And honestly, I wouldn't really be the type of person to handlebar Ibuki anyway. You know, in spite of all the memes, Ibuki's too precious. So, unfortunately, I think Ibuki will have to join Moka in the D. D for did not find handlebars. Alright, next up we have Kasumi. I think we've got something good here. So Kasumi, not only do her horns have a lot of girth, they're on the sides of her head too. And Kasumi's not that tall, so you don't have to reach that far up. And they're on the sides of her head, so if you're handlebarring Kasumi, it's kind of like driving a motorcycle. And I think that's actually the quintessential definition of what handlebars should be. So when we're ranking based on handlebars, I think Kasumi's motorcycle handlebars are exactly what they should be. Now, I'm not sure if that's deserving of the double S tier, but for now, I think Kasumi is deserving of the S tier, so we'll put her there, but I'll see if I need to make any changes. Let's move on to Erika. So Erika is kind of like a Momoka and Ibuki case, but in her defense, her horns aren't that small. There's actually a little bit poking out here that you can reasonably grab onto. Now, grab onto doesn't mean you can do anything with them, because I think with Erika, you don't have that much to work with. So even if she's got more potential than Momoka or Ibuki, that doesn't mean there is any sizable potential. So unfortunately, while I do love Erica and I think she's adorable, I'm gonna put her into C tier because there's just not that much. Now next up we have Nia. So Nia's an interesting case. First off, might I say, I think her horns are really beautiful. The tricolor or color gradient, very awesome. The cracked horn, very nice, very lovely aesthetic. But let's talk about the handlebars. Hers are actually very large. They have good grippable potential. Maybe not on the left side, but I guess if you're pulling down at the base, it's not a big deal if they're cracked. Nia herself is kind of tall, so you might have some trouble, but other than that, you should mostly be okay. They are sprouting from the top of her head and the front, so you do have to reach a little bit, but it's really not that much of a problem because they're so accessible. She's got more to offer than Erica and less to offer than Satsuki, I think, so I think B tier is perfect for her. Next up, we have Aaru. Now, Aaru is a weird case. She does seem to have the handlebar situation going on, just like Hasumi, but the shape of her horns are weird. Now, it's not to say that I don't think they look nice, because I think they look incredible. However, I don't know if the grip potential is there, because if we were to take a look back at Kasumi's, you can see that it sprouts out. These literally look like, I guess not literally, but they pretty much do look like actual handlebars that you can grab onto like right at the middle. But in Aaru's case, I don't think you can. It's kind of an awkward grabbing situation. So while I didn't really talk about this for the other characters, in Aaru's case, because the placement is so prime for handlebars, then we need to look after that. We need to look at the actual configuration of the horns to see if they fit the handlebar criteria. And I don't really think Aaru's horns are that suitable for handlebars. Maybe if you're doing like a backhand grab, because I'm always thinking like a forward grip, like how you would grip motorcycles, like motorcycle handles. But if you're doing like a backwards grip, then maybe it's possible, but I don't know. I think after looking at Aaru's, what I'm going to decide is, I think Kasumi's actually deserving of the double S tier, because I can't find any problems with hers. And Aaru, because the placement is so good, I'm going to give her the S tier. And you do have to work around a little bit to get full use of the handlebars, but apart from that, I think her placement is very well deserving of the S tier. Now moving on to Kayoko. Now Kayoko, hers are in the back, so you don't have to reach it at all. They're just right there. Now that might make it a little awkward because, like I said, I'm basing it on the standing up position. I'm not doing any other position. So maybe you have to like space yourself apart a little bit, and it's a little weird. I can't tell exactly like where her head is blocking what seems to be the gap in her horns. I can't tell exactly if that's an opening for you to grab onto. But even if it is, her horns are really close together. So I don't know how much value you'd actually get out of pulling her horns. I'm not gonna lie though, I mean, I got distracted by looking at Kayoko's dress sprite because it's just so good. It's just so attractive. Her horns themselves, the design's pretty nice. They're very simple, but they still fit her pretty well, especially her base form. In her dress form, yeah, I guess it is like simple aesthetic, so it does fit her pretty well. On back to the handlebars topic, I don't know. I can't really say that the positioning or the shape makes for useful handlebars, so it's a weird situation. I think because Kayoko's horns are large, she's got potential to have good handlebars, but just because the placement and the shape is so weird, I think low B is as high as she can go. Maybe even top of C tier, but for now, I think B tier is alright for her. Alright, we're moving on to Junko. So Junko's horns, I guess they're shaped kind of like Kayoko's, but they're on opposite sides of her head, so you've got some good horizontal distance there. But yeah, I guess since Junko's kind of short, then it being higher up instead of to the side right here does make for a better set of horns for her case. The height of the character does matter. We're making the assumption that I'm making the assumption that Sensei's as tall as like a little shorter than Hasumi. That's my assumption, like Satsuki height. Anyway, yeah, so the placement for her height is not bad. The shape is alright as well. I feel like there's no room here to grab though. If it's like touching her hair directly, then you're gonna have to like shove your hand in there, and that's very impractical. So I think we fall into a similar issue as Kayoko's as well, where the hair is kind of in the way. For Kayoko's, it was like the angle. I didn't know if it was in the way because of the angle, but For Junko's, I can clearly tell that there's no gap. So while Junko's horns, I guess in her base little sprite right here, it's kinda possible, but I still don't think so. So I think it's a similar thing for Kayako's case, where the actual horns themselves, if placed better, could make for really good handlebars, but because of where they are, it's just not really that possible. So I'm gonna give her spot right next to Kayako. All right, moving on to Izumi. So Izumi's got those massive ram horns. Like, I don't actually think you could grab onto them because you need like gorilla hands, you need Mika hands to grab onto these horns. Not just because they're so like, I mean, no, it's exactly because they're so large. Like, how are you supposed to wrap your hand around this? Do you see this? And Izumi herself, you know, I'm talking about like her whole body, like it's huge. So her horns in comparison are also very massive. So I don't actually think you can grab onto them. So it's a similar situation with like Junko's and Kayako's, where the horns themselves could make for good handlebars, but just the situation they're in makes it pretty difficult. Now I think in Izumi's case, just because they're so large, you can't really do anything with them. I mean, you could try to grab onto them, so maybe it would work, but I think above Kayako and Junko will be alright for her. Now next up, got Akari. Akari's a similar case to, I think, Aaru. Aaru's points up, but hers points forward. So actually, I think it's more like Kasumi's, if I'm going back. Kasumi's, they're just going straight outward, so those are free real estate. For Akari's, they're pointing downwards. So honestly, it still might be possible, because in Kasumi's case, they would point down and then go outward, but Akari stops before going outward. So it's a similar situation. Now, I don't actually think you can get a good handlebar grip with these. Maybe like a, I don't know how to describe it, and I'm not going to try. But still, I think the positioning is in a really good spot too, just like ours. And honestly, I think she offers just as much as ours, because hers are pretty much ours but flipped. So there she goes. Next up we have Fuka. Now Fuka is the least likely candidate for someone to handlebar because she's adorable and precious. But if we had to talk about them anyway, Fuka's horns look fragile, but I don't think they are. Let's just assume they're not. Now if they're not, because they're thin and pointing down, kind of like Akari's, you can get some good grippage with them. The problem is they're sprouting from the front of her head and outward, so you do have to reach a little far, but I mean, Fuka's not that large, so you'll be okay. Apart from that, yeah, the fact that they're sprouting from the front makes it a little iffy, and if they're sprouting forward, like away from her, that's also not good as well, because you have to reach much farther for that. But the horns themselves aren't bad. I don't think it's similar to like these three, because unlike them, you can actually get somewhere with Fuka's horns. I'm actually gonna put her above them, just because in comparison to Nia, I think she basically has similar functions to Nia, so I'll just keep her there. Next up we have Juri. I think Juri is a very similar situation to Izumi's, where can you actually grab those? Now Juri's not a small character, so I don't know if you can grab them. Hers are basically like, I mean, they're in the right position, as I kept saying with like Kasumi, Aaru, Akari, they're in the right position, but can they be grabbed onto? I think they're way too large right here, where it curves or where it turns. I think it's way too massive. So I think it will knock her down from the S tier, but still keep her in a high A. Like we said with Izumi's, like maybe you could like partially grab onto them. So I'll just put her above Satsuki. All right, next up we have Senna. So Senna's got a weird case. Her horns are quite small and they sprout out from the front and go up. So you can grab onto them if you reach around. I still don't think they're that effective though, especially because they're kind of small. I think it's like similar to, let's see, honestly a similar case to maybe not quite like Erika's, and a little and much smaller than Nia's and Fuka's too. Honestly, that might just put her in the same league as Erika, because they're not that large and they're in the front, so it offsets the fact that they're larger, because Erika's at the top, in the middle, in the center of her head, so you can actually reach them. For Senna's, you have to wrap around, so I think Senna will go below Erika, but they're basically side by side. All right, next up we have Megu. Whew, those are massive, and those look really nice too. The scarlet red, I guess, crimson red, I don't know, it looks incredible though. But the handlebar potential, so they do sprout up from the side of her head. It's kind of like a Junko situation, but hers are way larger. don't know if they're too large, especially because Megu is a larger character. I can't say for sure. I actually do think right here, they're not too large. So you could probably get away with here. Now, I did say we're considering the standing up position, but if Megu's always bent down like that, then maybe, you know, you can get something done with that. But I don't know. I guess it's very similar to a horn too large situation. But honestly, in Megu's case, you can get away with it. So I'll actually put her in the A tier next to Satsuki. I think hers is very similar to Satsuki's, but Satsuki is way more potential. All right, next up we have Chise. Chise's is like what I wanted to compare Senna to. Now, I already said in Fuka's case, we're not going to assume they're fragile, but Chise's just looks way too fragile. I doubt they are, but I just can't stop thinking that they'd snap off or bend in a weird way. Yeah, it's kind of like a Senna situation, but they do point out higher, so you could get more done with them. I still can't say for sure. Compared to everyone else, I think she has barely more to offer than Erika or Senna. In comparison to everyone on the tier list, she's basically on par with them, but I'll keep her above them. All right, next up we have Hina. 4 horns, and Hina's not a character I absolutely despise, unlike Makoto, so I can actually rate her properly. Now here's the problem with Hina. I wouldn't handlebar Hina. It's basically what I said with Ibuki. Hina's too precious. But if we're talking about the practicality of the handlebars, I honestly can't say. Why do these outside horns look flimsy? I know they're absolutely not. They must be like rock solid. But the way they're drawn, I don't know. I guess in Hina's case, it's kind of like a mix and match type of thing, because in Makoto's case, like I said, as if we were going to properly rate Makoto, but in Makoto's case, you probably wouldn't ever reach for the bottom 2, you'd exclusively reach for the top 2. But in Hina's case, because they're all spread out like this, you can reach for any 2 you want. 5, 6. It's 6. It is 6. Okay. Anyway, before I keep getting carried away, I think the fact that there are 6 different ways to grab onto Hina's horns with 2 hands does make up for the fact that some of them are in odd positions. Double S tier. The first time I put 2 characters in double S. What a sight. Anyway, 3 more characters. Starting off with Sumomo, kicking off the last 3. Sumomo's got really sizable horns. They do sprout forward though, so it's kind of like Fuka's case where I'm not exactly sure how effective they are because of the way they curl and the fact that they're not like going forward like Fuka's appear to be. They're just going straight up, and the fact that Sumomo is a really small character so you can reach that far. I honestly think her horns might not be too bad. Compared to everyone else though, where does she rank? The way I talked about it, she would be B tier, but the way they look, she might be in the same camp as the C tier characters. But I talked about it as if she was on par with Nia and Fuka, so maybe I'll put her there. You know what? Yeah, I'll put her there. I think they have some versatility since she's a small character. All right, Renge. So, unfortunately, Renge has 1 horn, so I don't know if we're doing how do I describe this? You know, like in like anime where like the hero holds out his sword, like his 2-handed sword in front of the villain. Is that how you're supposed to grab onto Renge's horn? 2-hand grip forward? That's really weird. I'm not gonna lie, that's really weird. Now, Renge's horn is sizable, so it's not like straight up D tier like Momoka's and Ibuki's, but I don't know. Me personally, I'm just not liking the 1 horn idea. I will be fair, like where versatility goes, honestly, her horn is pretty much like Chise's, but there's only 1, so I'll put her below Chise. Last, we got Chiaki. Now, Chiaki's sprouts forward like I said with Fuka's, and I think that's a little bit of a problem because then you have to reach much farther. Now that I'm actually looking at it, maybe it's not too bad that you have to reach that far. Because if you remember, the main complaint about Kayoko's was that it's right behind her head, so you have to like distance yourself. But in Chiaki's case, where it's all the way in the front, maybe that's better. Maybe that is better, and that's probably why I gave Sumomo B tier instead of C tier. Going back to the tier list though, she would probably rank actually right next to Sumomo in that case. So yeah, right next to Sumomo. I actually honestly think Chiaki's horns, since they're larger, she'd probably have more use than Sumomo, if not Fuka. But I think Fuka has better grip potential. Now, would I reorder any of these? No. Actually, I would. I'll do 1. I'm not even going to rename the tier. She doesn't deserve that. Anyway, this will be the No, not the horns tier list. This is the handlebars tier list. So thanks for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.